The Last Leaf by O. Henry. In a little district west of Washington Square, the streets have run crazy and broken themselves into small strips called places. These places make strange angles and curves. One street crosses itself a time or two. An artist once discovered this street and made it known to a few. The art people soon came prowling, hunting for north windows and 18th-century gables and Dutch attics and low rents. Then they imported some pewter mugs and a chafing dish or two from 6th Avenue and became a colony. At the top of a squatty, 3-story brick, Sue and Johnsy had their studio. Johnsy was familiar for Joanna. One was from Maine, the other from California. They had met at the table d'hôte of an 8th Street Delmonico's and found their tastes in art, chicory salad, and bishop sleeves so congenial that the joint studio resulted. That was in May. In November, a cold, unseen stranger, whom the doctors called pneumonia, stalked about the colony, touching one here and there with his icy fingers. Over on the east side, this ravager strode boldly, smiting his victims by scores, but his feet trod slowly through the maze of the narrow and moss-grown places. Mr. Pneumonia was not what you would call a chivalric old gentleman. A mite of a little woman with blood thinned by California zephyrs was hardly fair game for the red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. But Johnsy he smote, and she lay scarcely moving on her painted iron bedstead, looking through the small Dutch window panes at the blank side of the next brick house. One morning the busy doctor invited Sue into the hallway with a shaggy, gray eyebrow. "She has one chance in, let us say, 10, he said, as he shook down the mercury in his clinical thermometer. "And that chance is for her to want to live. This way people have of lining up on the side of the undertaker makes the entire pharmacopoeia look silly. Your little lady has made up her mind that she's not going to get well. Has she anything on her mind?" She wanted to paint the Bay of Naples someday," said Sue. "Paint? Bosh. Has she anything on her mind worth thinking twice? A man, for instance?" "A man?" said Sue, with a Jew's harp twang in her voice. "Is a man worth? But, no, doctor, there is nothing of the kind." "Well, it is the weakness then," said the doctor. "I will do all that science, so far as it may filter through my efforts, can accomplish. But whenever my patient begins to count the carriages in her funeral procession, I subtract 50% from the curative power of medicines. If you will get her to ask one question about the new winter styles and cloak sleeves, I will promise you a 1 in 5 chance for her, instead of 1 in 10. After the doctor had gone, Sue went into the workroom and cried a Japanese napkin to a pulp. Then she swaggered into Johnsy's room with her drawing board, whistling ragtime. Johnsy lay, scarcely making a ripple under the bedclothes, with her face toward the window. Sue stopped whistling, thinking she was asleep. She arranged her board and began a pen and ink drawing to illustrate a magazine story. Young artists must pave their way to art by drawing pictures for magazine stories that young authors write to pave their way to literature. As Sue was sketching a pair of elegant horse-show riding trousers and a monocle on the figure of the hero, an Idaho cowboy, she heard a low sound, several times repeated. She went quickly to the bedside. Johnsy's eyes were open wide. She was looking out the window and counting backward. 12, she said, and a little later 11, and then 10, and 9, and then 8 and 7, almost together. Sue looked solicitously out the window. What was there to count? There was only a bare, dreary yard to be seen, and the blank side of the brick house 20 feet away. An old ivy vine, gnarled and decayed at the roots, climbed halfway up the brick wall. The cold breath of autumn had stricken its leaves from the vine until its skeleton branches clung, almost bare, to the crumbling bricks. "What is it, dear?" asked Sue. 6, said Johnsy, in almost a whisper. "They're falling faster now. 3 days ago there were almost 100. It made my head ache to count them. But now it's easy. There goes another one. There are only 5 left now." "5 what, dear?" "Tell your Sooty." "Leaves. On the ivy vine. When the last one falls I must go, too. I've known that for 3 days. Didn't the doctor tell you? Oh, I never heard of such nonsense, complained Sue, with magnificent scorn. What have old ivy leaves to do with your getting well? And you used to love that vine so, you naughty girl. Don't be a goosey. Why? The doctor told me this morning that your chances for getting well real soon were. Let's see exactly what he said. He said the chances were 10 to 1. Why? That's almost as good a chance as we have in New York when we ride on the streetcars or walk past a new building. Try to sleep, said Sue. I must call Behrman up to be my model for the old hermit miner. I'll not be gone a minute. Don't try to move till I come back. Old Behrman was a painter who lived on the ground floor beneath them. He was past 60 and had a Michelangelo's Moses beard curling down from the head of a satyr along the body of an imp. Behrman was a failure in art. 40 years he had wielded the brush without getting near enough to touch the hem of his mistress's robe. He had been always about to paint a masterpiece, but had never yet begun it. For several years he had painted nothing except now and then a daub in the line of commerce or advertising. He earned a little by serving as a model to those young artists in the colony who could not pay the price of a professional. He drank gin to excess and still talked of his coming masterpiece. For the rest, he was a fierce little old man who scoffed terribly at softness in anyone, and who regarded himself as a special mastiff in waiting to protect the two young artists in the studio above. Sue found Behrman smelling strongly of juniper berries in his dimly lighted den below. In one corner was a blank canvas on an easel that had been waiting there for 25 years to receive the first line of the masterpiece. She told him of Johnsy's fancy, and how she feared she would indeed, light and fragile as a leaf herself, float away when her slight hold upon the world grew weaker with the falling leaves of the decaying ivy on the brick wall. Is dear people in de world mit der foolishness to die because leaves they drop off from a confounded vine? He cried. Why do you allow dot? Dot poor little Miss Johnsy, she is very ill. Yes. She goes to die? And now some leaves drop off from dat damn vine, and she wants to die too. That is not any place in de world for such a fool business. I have not heard of such a thing. I shall not pose as a model for your fool hermit dunderhead. Why do you allow that silly business to come into brain of her? She is very ill and weak, said Sue, and the fever has left her mind morbid and full of strange fancies. Very well, Mr. Behrman, if you do not care to pose for me, you needn't. But I think you are a horrid old flibberty gibbet. You are just like a woman, yelled Behrman. Who said I will not pose? Go on. I come mit you. For half an hour I have been trying to say that I am ready to pose. Gott, this is not any place in which one so good as Miss Johnsy shall lie sick. Some day I will paint a masterpiece, and we shall all go away. Sue hurried back to the studio, and Behrman followed her, grumbling under his breath. It was already late afternoon, and the rain was still falling heavily, mingling with the snow. Sue shut the door behind them and went to Johnsy's bedside. Johnsy was still staring out the window. The last leaf was clinging to the vine. Don't look at it, darling, Sue said softly. You're going to get better, and you mustn't waste your time counting leaves. But Johnsy only nodded and continued watching the single leaf, which seemed to be holding on against the harsh elements. That night, Behrman worked in his tiny room. The storm outside howled fiercely, and the rain lashed against the windows. At midnight, he finally went out into the cold, armed with his paints and brushes. He climbed the ladder to the vine that had been the subject of Johnsy's obsession. He painted a leaf, a perfect leaf, so lifelike that it seemed to defy the storm. The next morning, when Johnsy woke up, she looked out the window, expecting to see the last leaf gone. But, to her surprise, the leaf was still there, its colors vibrant and firm against the bleak backdrop. As the day passed, the leaf remained. Johnsy watched it carefully, and she could hardly believe her eyes. The wind howled and the rain fell, but the leaf stayed put. After a few days, Johnsy began to regain her strength, and she no longer seemed obsessed with the leaf. Her will to live had returned. Sue, noticing Johnsy's recovery, smiled with relief. She was about to go downstairs to tell Behrman that the leaf had worked its magic when she heard a soft knock at the door. It was the doctor. "How is she?" he asked as he entered the room. "She's improving," Sue replied, her face lighting up. "She's eating, and her fever's gone. She's asking for some chicken soup." The doctor nodded. "It's a good sign. A few days ago, I wasn't sure she'd make it." Sue's face turned pale with concern. "Doctor, you don't think—" She paused, her voice faltering. The doctor shook his head. "No, it seems the worst has passed." As the doctor left, Sue turned back to Johnsy, who was looking out the window again. This time, the leaf was still there. "I'm so glad you're getting better, Johnsy," Sue said with a smile. Johnsy nodded, her face filled with gratitude. "I don't know why that last leaf stayed, but I think it saved me." "Maybe it did," said Sue. "But it wasn't just the leaf. It was your will to live, too." A week later, Behrman was found dead in his room. He had caught pneumonia and passed away quietly, alone. But when the doctors examined him, they found that he had died of the illness while working. He had gone out into the cold to paint the leaf and had stood there for hours, exposed to the harsh conditions, painting the final masterpiece of his career. In the end, Behrman's act of sacrifice, his final masterpiece, had saved Johnsy. The leaf that remained through the storm had given her the hope to fight for her life. And in doing so, Behrman had created his masterpiece, not on a canvas, but in the heart of a young woman who would live because of his selflessness.